Welcome to a football show, Thursday edition, where we talk about football-related things. His name is Zach Lyons. My name is Braden Gall. And also welcome to a brand new era of Tennessee Titans football. It has begun, Zach. It has begun. Get in those comments. Get in the questions. We will take all of them today on the show because we have much to discuss. As Ran Carthon has become the new general manager for your Tennessee Titans. So we have a lot of things to get to. I know that you and Mike Herndon spent a lot of time on the F Words pod this week, live streamed, by the way. You can go watch it as well, so make sure you check out that show. You guys spent a lot of time breaking down sort of the initial reactions and feelings and thoughts about what it all means and who Ran Carthon is as a person. But we're going to, of course, rehash some of that, got some reaction to that. There's a bunch of offensive coordinator openings across the NFL. There are 10 now with the news that Greg Roman is leaving Baltimore. So how attractive is this Tennessee Titans offensive coordinator position with all the situations that we know of, the head coach, the quarterback, the GM? So how attractive is this position to potential candidates? So we'll get into that. As well, we've got the NFL playoffs are happening, by the way. It's just pretty exciting to actually watch playoff football. So we've got a couple of games coming up this weekend we'll touch on as well. What would it mean for this team, this Titans team, to actually try to become the San Francisco 49ers? We'll kind of dive into what that could actually look like. Is it even a possible strategy that this Titans team can deploy with the new general manager? It, of course, seems like it could be a possibility. So we'll get into that as well. He will speak at his press conference on Friday at noon. So I'll give you a couple of questions that I would like to hear him answer at the press conference. So we've got a lot of stuff to do today on the show. Obviously, make sure you check out Zach's Substack, Stacking the Inbox at Substack. You can also get the links right there on the Twitter account as well, right? At F Words Pod. I believe you had a Ran Carthon article up in that Substack before any other human on the planet Earth, right?
Yes, no doubt. In fact, I got texts from some of my friends like, "Man, you even beat Jim Wyatt. I mean, you were on it." I was like, "Well, technically, I had it pretty much already written up for the I guess it would have been Wednesday morning release, and luckily they ended up just hiring him. So I just had to go in and change a few words and get it all in."
Just change the lead and you're good to go. And if you're reading that inbox, then you've already read a lot about potential free agent targets. You've read a lot about where his experience lies and what he's done in his career. We're not going to rehash every single detail of all of that. I do recommend subscribing to the Stacking the Inbox Substack by Zach Lyons at F Words Pod, of course, on Twitter.
It's my pinned tweet. Just go to my pinned tweet.
There you go. And of course, you've got all the other great shows across the 440 Sports Network, which now includes the Paul Kaharski podcast. So make sure you check that out. And as a reminder, please share the show. Just tell somebody about a football show. You can watch it on YouTube. You can get to us on Facebook, on Twitter, turn all the notifications on, of course, and as a podcast as well. So please take that and just tell one person about it in your life. We're not asking that much. Just tell one person about what's going on on a football show. We're going to talk about football. It's pretty self-explanatory there. So we have not yet gotten to our year anniversary yet, Zach. I don't know if we're going to do anything special for our 1 year anniversary.
But close. I mean, it's in April. Listen,
I'm
going to treat it just the same as I do my actual anniversary. A couple weeks out, we'll worry about
it. Yeah, that's exactly right. We already have a question from D Good about Trey Lance to the Titans. We did a ton of quarterback conversation on Monday's episode. So if you want to go through all the sort of current starting quarterbacks or options potentially for the Tennessee Titans, go listen to that show. The two we did not talk about much were Trey Lance and Jordan Love. I don't know if we can get to those in a minute. As D Good says, not trying to ruin our mood because we want to talk about the GM and the future of the franchise and the new era of Tennessee Titans football. Before we do, Zach, why don't you tell everybody who this wonderful and amazing free product is sponsored by? You want to do that? You want to try it out this time? See if you can do it? Take the training wheels off?
For what free product?
Well, the Kingston Group and Pharmacy.
They're not free.
Well, no, a football show is free.
Oh, gotcha. Oh, well, the Kingston Group, I mean, buildkg.com. It is the place. If you got any kind of work you got to do around the house as far as some remodeling, or even if you want to build a new house, you got to go to buildkg.com. They have the best workers. They're dedicated, they're dependable, and they use the best materials in every job they got. And of course, the Pharmacy Burger. I mean, it's a Nashville staple. You have to go to the Pharmacy Burger. I know back in the day, really probably 3 or 4 years ago, little people start getting sour, and they were like, "Oh, well, all these new burger places are popping up, and the pharmacy's just a pharmacy." Bullshit. The pharmacy's always been one of the better burger places, and still one of the best burger places. They got the best tots, they got the best selection, the best beer. I mean, in fact, they just got a Memphis beer that I'd never even heard of and I was just in Memphis a couple weeks ago, and they're the only ones in town. They are ahead of the game in beer. They are ahead of the game in burgers, head and shoulders above the rest of Pharmacy Burger.
Yes, very collaborative, by the way, Kingston Group, Build KG. Very innovative, modern, and collaborative. 3 words you're probably going to hear a lot on the show today. Sean, does Build KG, does Kingston Group build tiny homes? I assume they could build you like a fleet of tiny homes, like a whole offensive line of tiny homes. I assume you could talk to them about that. Look, even if you're trying to build a tiny home, just call them and talk to them and see what they say. They will probably give you better advice than anybody else. So make sure you check that out. How about the Titans become a good version of the Titans? That's I like that. Because we're talking about of course, we're going to compare them to San Francisco, and can they become a version of San Francisco in the AFC? We'll kind of debate in and out how that could happen, and maybe some of the major hurdles to trying to accomplish that, of course. But again, buildkg.com for the Kingston Group and Pharmacy. I think you said it. Nashville staples, locally owned and operated for over a decade in this market for local people, and we do appreciate it. Okay, so first off, Ran Carthon is your new general manager for the Tennessee Titans. Again, I know you've done a lot of this with F-words, but for our audience here, he began in Atlanta from 2008 to 11 as a scout. He went to the Rams. He worked for Les Snead, who was the sort of the number 2 in charge underneath Thomas Dimitrioff. He then goes with Les Snead. Here's the first good positive sign. Les Snead goes to the Rams from 12 to 16 and says, "You know what? I'm going to bring you with me, Ran." So he brings Ran with him
in the same position he had with the Falcons.
So gave him a
raise.
Lots
of respect.
Yep, brought him with him, gave him a raise. So there's a really big number 1 big bullet point on a positive review there from Les Snead, who went on to, of course, build a Super Bowl champion. He was there. Ran was there with the St. Louis, then Los Angeles Rams director of pro personnel. He then goes to San Francisco in 2017 for 4 seasons. He's the director of pro personnel, which is when Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch were building this whole thing with San Francisco. They make him the guy there. He then becomes the director of player personnel, which includes drafts a lot more heavily in the last 2 seasons, which includes my favorite player of 2022, by the way. My very favorite player in the entire NFL for 2022 was Talanoa Hufanga, the safety, the 5th-round pick that they drafted.
He's a delight
2 years
to watch.
Ago.
He's must see. It's just like Troy Polamalu, and I know that's an easy comparison to make because obviously they have island descent in them. But he's amazing to watch. I mean, he really is awesome. Like watching prime Troy, maybe not prime, but exciting Troy Polamalu.
Well, I mean, look, the hair, the Samoan background, played at USC. Like it's pretty, it's a pretty easy comparison to make. But he is just absolutely like. There's very few players you just sit down and you go, what a pleasure. Like, what a pleasure to watch that guy. And he has been my favorite player to watch largely the entire season. But he drafted him. Ran Carthon, a big part of drafting him. And they had a rookie offensive lineman this year that started all 16 games, I believe, that was in this past year's draft in the 4th round. So you can see his fingerprints on the draft as well as the free agency market. If you want to go into every single personnel detail, I recommend subscribing to Stacking the Inbox. By this guy named Zach Lyons. You subscribe there.
The inbox. There you go. Wait a minute. It's stackingtheinbox.substack.com. It's a really tongue twister of a thing to say, but it's only $4 a month. And like I'm about to finish up a 3,500 plus article on some coaches that have connection with Ran Carthon. So that could be brought in for offensive coordinator, defensive backs coach, and offensive line coach. And by popular demand, the subscribers want to see it. So I'm going to give it to him. I'm going to basically take
bikini shots.
No, basically take the press conference tomorrow, and they want press conference quick hits, I guess you'd say.
There you go.
That'll be for tomorrow.
All right. Well, we got to have a reaction to a press conference because, as we know, press conferences are where you win and lose football games.
Exactly. It's why if you look at Mike Vrabel's demeanor, that's why the win streak was just. It was terrible.
Yes,
all the press conferences.
All of the press conferences. Donnie already asking, saying and stating, keep Greg Roman far from this team. Yes, we will get to offensive coordinator a little bit later on because, again, there are now 10 openings. The Titans are one of them. How attractive is this team? So there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of positives about Ran Carthon being the new general manager, and we've talked kind of a little bit about them. You talked a lot about him with Mike Herndon on F Words. And there is this leadership quality he gets rave reviews for. He gets rave reviews for his personality and how he works with other people. I believe that would be considered collaboration. Building relationships with players. I think there's all these positive things. He clearly has the respect of a lot of well-ranked, highly respected people in the NFL. You've got John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan and Adam Peters and Les Snead and Thomas Dimitriev and all these people that have hired him and thought very highly of him. So there's a lot of things. Now, the biggest, it's not a negative, but it is the biggest question I have about Ran Carthon. And this is what I want you to kind of go on here. All of these things I just mentioned, all the positive stuff, all the things that we think we know about him and that he's accomplished so far. Technically, he was basically the third best GM at San Francisco, right? Because Adam Peters is the guy in waiting, supposedly.
It depends on who you ask, because fans think otherwise.
Okay, that's fair. Let's hypothetically, John Lynch is the guy. Let's say Adam Peters is the number 2. He's the number 3. This is why he takes the opportunity to come to the Titans. Also because of a great owner in Amy Adams Strunk and a great head coach in Mike Vrabel. And there's a lot of other reasons why he would want the opportunity. But just like a big-time 5-star recruit quarterback, just like a top draft pick quarterback, just like a first-time head football coach, all of this stuff is generally on everyone's resume when they get the job for the first time. And the only real question we have is, can he do it? We just don't know until we see it happen, till he builds a scouting department, till he makes decisions about Tannehill and Henry, till he, the only big question mark is we just don't know. There's no proven anything in life and in sports and in the NFL. And I guess the question is, can he handle the bright lights? And that's all. That's really the only question I have about him.
Well, I think that if that's the question, I think can he handle the bright lights? I think that would put you at like minus 180 odds, maybe minus 110 odds. I think that he is likely to do it, but there's that, little bit of, oh, maybe he won't just because he is inexperienced technically, or maybe he is this, or maybe it's all San Francisco. If you look at what the people that cover San Francisco say, they pretty much want John Lynch promoted and Adam Peters to be GM. If that had happened, then obviously, and Ran Carthon was not hired here, he would be the assistant GM or the vice president of player personnel, whatever, the second in command. Obviously, he is well respected wherever he goes. And in my mind, you got initially, he was my second best candidate when you include Adam Peters. And then I let Mike talk me into Ian Cunningham. And I really enjoy Ian Cunningham, but really 1A, 1B, Ian Cunningham, Ran Carthon, back and forth.
Not a huge difference, frankly, in their resumes.
No. I think you got the better lineage with Ian Cunningham, and you get more of both sides, the draft and the pro personnel. But what I like about Ran Carthon is that he essentially has looked at every NFL team that San Francisco has played, which is all 31 teams, a couple of times because he's been there that long now, and he has scouted numerous NFL players. And really, what has been the biggest problem with this team? I think the veteran additions have been a bigger problem with this team than the draft picks, because they're ignoring certain players out there. Remember, they didn't go after Marvin Jones. They didn't go after the only wide receiver they went after was Josh Reynolds. And to me, and that's talking about talk. And to me, that means that probably Ran Carthon wouldn't have waited to the 11th hour to try to grab someone. Who's the first people they sign? Oh, Kendall Lamb. Oh, here's Jamarco Jones and AJ Moore. And then they overpay for Bud Dupree, which turns into an overpay, which wasn't considered an overpay at the time, but I was willing to live with it up to a certain point and understand it. But Ran Carthon, he's going to ignore all this stuff. If you want speed, if you want good deals, and if you want physical football played, this is going to be the guy that's going to give it to you.
And those are the things that you've been talking about and Vrabel talked about, and you've been talking about since Vrabel talked about it. That's what they want to do. I want to add one really big adjective, though. because I think there's another word that describes San Francisco, and maybe this is jumping ahead of ourselves here to our San Francisco conversation, but we'll dive into this a little bit more in terms of how they actually were constructed, why they're constructed that way, and can the Titans replicate that, or even should they replicate that, frankly. But I think one of the other big words that when you look at how San Francisco has been built and what Ran and Adam and Lynch and Kyle have all done out there, where it's like a South Park episode, what those four guys have done out there in terms of building it all with an entire department, it's not just speed, it's not just size, it's not just physicality, it is versatility. Versatility is a really big one with that offense in particular. It's a huge part of almost each one of those pieces that they've acquired in very different ways. So we'll get into a little bit more about that when we compare, what needs to happen for them to try to replicate, if they want to, the San Francisco thing. I just think there are big questions that you simply cannot answer about any person, quarterback, head coach, GM, whatever, stepping into the role for the first time. He's never built a scouting department when he is the top of the food chain. He's never done that, so he's going to have to do that probably after the draft, which is what I believe.
Can I
John
say
Robinson
something
did.
though, because we don't know when he's been the pro personnel how he was in charge of who were the pro scouts underneath him. Did he pick the pro scouts that were underneath him, or did John Lynch pick the scouts? Did Ran Carthon pick them, evaluate them, hire them, or then give it to John Lynch and John Lynch just signed off on it? We don't know. So we can't really say that he's never built a scouting department of some kind.
That's fair. I assume, like all hierarchical structures of reporting and power, that there's some influence there, but that the buck has never stopped with him, where he was the guy whose nameplate is on every decision, who's on the roster. They have a very similar situation in terms of how Kyle builds the roster, and John Lynch in San Francisco kind of handles all the other stuff around the free agents and the draft, and it's collaborative, but also they kind of have their distinct lanes that they stay in, which I think is very clearly what Amy Adams Strunk wants with her new GM, and Mike Vrabel. But he's just like, again, it's not a quantifiable thing. Like when you hire a guy who's been a head coach before, you have a win-loss record to evaluate. You have statistical data. You have all these other things. We have a lot of things that say this is an extremely positive and exciting move, but you just don't ever know. And that's really the only question I have. And now, what do I want to hear him say at his press conference? I don't think we're going to get anything about the future of Ryan Tannehill or Derrick Henry or any other big names. I don't think we're going to get any insight into that. I want to know how he defines leadership, and I want to know what he thinks makes a good talent evaluator. Those are the two things I want to hear from Ran Carthon in his first press conference.
I want to hear. I want to hear what. I had it earlier, and I should have wrote it down because I had the wording exactly like I wanted it. I want to hear what he thinks about the state of the roster.
Yeah.
What does he think is the keys to the game to win and build a winning roster? What did the players that he's looking for? Because if he says, I'm looking for, the same stuff that I'm looking for Mike Vrabel with, then yeah. I also want to know how much of his this collaboration extends into the coaching search for all these coaches that are up. Does he have a lot of maybe more input than what everybody expects? And ultimately, again, ends with Mike Vrabel, but maybe the collaboration is, I got all these guys that I know that we need to at least interview and you need to meet. And yeah, I want to know if that's the plan. I want to hit something real quick. Joshua Medina puts up here, all I know is the more important part of Carthon's job is finding a franchise quarterback, something the Titans have never had and are desperately in need of. Steve McNair exists.
He was a franchise quarterback.
That is a franchise quarterback. Yeah. And whether you want to believe it or not, Ryan Tannehill is a franchise quarterback for the Tennessee Titans. And I know that now the definition has turned into, well, you have to be elite and you have to be young and you have to be this. If it wasn't for Ryan Tannehill, the Tennessee Titans would be in a worse place than where they would ever be. And so he, by very definition, is a franchise quarterback.
Yeah, I think when people use that phrase, I think you're right. It's evolved a little bit like, can you be a winning starting quarterback to, are you Patrick Mahomes? Like, I think that's evolved into, like, you've got to find the guy who's going to be the starter for 15 years. And Tannehill's, again, had the Titans had Tannehill for the first 7 or 8 or 9 years of his career, maybe we'd be having a different conversation. But the other thing is, Stoney says here, does a more collaborative environment lessen the pressure on him, though more of a group effort? And I do because there is going to be this is a human element side of this. There's going to be learning on the job. You've never had the job before. You're going to have to learn some stuff. Like some things you're going to have to work through. That's very natural. Having Mike Vrabel with a little bit more power and being more of a partner in all of this, I do think that helps, like sort of the onboarding process, right? Like getting him up to speed and kind of like getting him comfortable in the role and everything. I think that's the collaborative nature of the situation, I think, does help.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that I just have so much faith wrapped up into him, and it was going to be like that for whether it's him or Ian Cunningham, because I just have been studying these two guys and doing the research and looking at them, and there's just, to me, they have everything that you want if you are a fan that has been craving innovation, evolution, both for the chances of the team and the players that they are looking at and how they move forward as a franchise. Those were the two guys. I was just all in on either one of those, especially Adam Peters as well. I'd have been fine with him. I'd have been all right with Glenn Cook and probably Malik Boyd, but I would kind of feel like we'd kind of float around in mediocrity. Ran Carthon knows what it takes to build teams. He helped build the team to get to where it was at when Sean McVay took over right after he left for San Francisco. That team was instantly good, and Sean McVay had everything really that he needed, and it shot up quick. And he learned from Les Snead, who just won a Super Bowl because he took a big swing. And there is a good chance that the 49ers are also going to win a Super Bowl because they took a big swing on Christian McCaffrey.
Mm-hmm.
Now, listen, that does not mean that this team is all in on running backs and, they're going to trade for a running back or whatever. But if there is a trade out there, Jalen Ramsey, DeAndre Hopkins, that he thinks can turn this franchise around like those did, maybe Lamar Jackson when he gets tagged. You don't know. The whole thing is that, to me, he's going to take a big swing one way or the other, and I feel like he's going to take a big swing this year. I just don't know what that looks like yet, but I just feel when you look, it's like the people who think that, oh, well, he's here. That means that they're probably going to be interested in Jimmy G. Why would he be interested in a guy that never stayed healthy that they actively tried to replace and get rid of?
Right. And like it's almost the same thing with Trey Lance. Like if we get rumors that they've put an offer in to trade for Trey Lance, then we know exactly what he thinks of Trey Lance. Like it's because he's a part of that. I will say, and a couple of good questions here. AE says, will Amy Adams Strunk answer questions tomorrow? Curious who will be there to introduce him. I assume she will introduce him. I'll be there. I'll report back, but I doubt I doubt that she will take questions. I don't want to get into is the Tannehill a franchise quarterback conversation. Yeah. I know a lot of you guys are talking about that. I agree with you, Joshua. I don't think he quote unquote is, but that's because I agree with Zach that the definition has evolved a little bit and changed from what it really is.
I just think that people just need to use the correct phrases. I don't understand this whole idea that why are we now making franchise be generational? Just let's separate them. Let's do. If you think the Titans have had a generational quarterback, I agree with you. I don't think they have. If you don't think they've had franchise quarterbacks, then I disagree.
Yeah, now I think we're arguing semantics. Like I would
they're not the same.
The only thing I would call a franchise quarterback is a guy who is so good that he's top 10 and he wins Super Bowls. Like that's what I would call a franchise.
Well, not every generation. Not. Okay, so I guess Dan Marino, not a franchise quarterback.
No, he was the starter for the whole time, and they competed for championships, and he broke every
never
single
won
record
a Super Bowl.
Broke all kinds of records. Anyway, this is what I do. This is why we didn't want to do this. So here's the thing, and we'll wrap up the conversation on the hiring of him and who he is. I think every single you can pick apart a lot of coaching hires, right? Like even when we were talking about Eric Bieniemy and Matt Nagy as possibilities, we can even pick apart and have little things that when you're, hey, what about this or what about that? There's not really anything like that on his resume. Like he checks every single box for a first-time GM. He checks every single box you could possibly want. He comes from the best organization in terms of how it's been constructed from the top down in the entire league. He's been a part of drafting really good players. He's been well respected by a lot of high-level people in different situations. He has risen through the ranks. He's got a ton of respect from, high-level agents. He's a part of all the different seminars that the NFL is promoting because people love him so much. And oh, by the way, he was probably the guy all along. He was probably the guy all along because they hire him like 12 seconds after another candidate like walks out of an interview, it just seems like he was kind of their guy the entire time, and maybe it was Peters and him, and it was down to those two, and they were fine with both of them. But there's not really a negative. There's not really other than the inexperience and the lack of having that specific job. There's not really a negative thing on his resume. He even played the game in the South in college. So like, I don't know. So we shall see. All right. So can this team become the San Francisco 49ers? Now, I'm curious what you think about this from an offensive coordinator standpoint, but we'll get to that in a second. I want to use the phrase, the words that you've been using. And by the way, Kingston Group and Pharmacy, two great sponsors here on the show. Make sure you check them out, BuildKG.com and the Pharmacy for great burgers. Put your phones down after watching and listening to the show and go have a great burger out in the patio there. Weather's starting to get nice again, by the way. I'm sure there'll be 1 week in April where it's like 5 degrees, but that's, we all know that's coming. Speed, physicality, size, and versatility. So here's my concern about the can we become the Niners thing. This is my concern, is that the pieces that they have are not generational, not once in a lifetime, but for example, how many teams have a tight end like George Kittle in the world? Like, how many teams in the world have a player like George Kittle? Like 3, 5, maybe in the NFL?
I would say just one other.
Okay.
I would say that is, well, some
Ravens,
people may include Mark Andrews, but Mark Andrews is not on the level of Travis Kelce and George Kittle in my mind.
Agree. So I'll go through these fairly quickly. By the way, he's a 5th round pick, so you can get him. But what are the odds you're going to find a player like that? Now, we love Chig, but is he going to be George Kittle? Probably not. Christian McCaffrey is arguably the number 1 all-purpose running back on the planet alive today. So that's a pretty hard thing to acquire, especially when you have to give up a first-round pick to draft him or 4 picks to get him.
Right, but they also didn't necessarily need him when they went to the Super Bowl a couple of years ago.
No, very true. Because, again, also
running backs don't matter.
No, true, but also that leads us right to the head coach. We can all try to replicate Nick Saban. We can all try to replicate Bill Belichick. You can all try to replicate Kyle Shanahan. There's a reason that those guys have all the success that they have, is because you can't just create another You can't just create another Kyle Shanahan. Deebo Samuel was the 36th overall pick. That was before A.J. Brown was drafted. That is a very high second-round pick. He's also a 5-star recruit, extremely versatile, hard to find that guy. Kyle Juszczyk was a free agent. They did sign him as a free agent, but he's arguably the best fullback on the planet.
Guess who was responsible for evaluating and getting him there? Ran Carthon.
Love that. Also, again, how many Kyle Juszczyks are there from Harvard who are the best fullbacks?
Guess who was responsible for George Kittle? Ran Carthon.
That's right. Brandon Ayuk was a 1st-round pick, and he's like the 4th or 5th best weapon on the team basically right now. Juwan Jennings was a 7th-round pick. You can get him anywhere. I think they can acquire a piece like that. Trent Williams, they traded a 5th and 3rd-round pick for arguably the best left tackle on the planet. My point is, I'm building all of this up to say you have some of the most elite of elite pieces at almost every critical position on the offense. I think they can absolutely replicate the 49ers on defense. I think they're actually pretty close.
They got to get some more speed, and stay healthy.
But man, the offensive side is going to be very hard on any team to try to replicate the collection of pieces that they have in San Francisco.
Yeah, I think it's going to come down to a lot of if you're looking for that to happen in 2023, it's likely not going to happen. But if you're looking for the glimmer of hope for this offense to become or see the path and see the vision, that's what you're looking for. When Ran Carthon is making moves in free agency, when he's making moves cutting people, when he's making moves via trade, or he's making moves in the draft, and he's going to all these pro days, you want to be able to see the vision. And you saw the vision with John Robinson, and then the vision just got really cloudy, and then it was kind of like shooting a laser in a cloud where it just goes everywhere. That's kind of like what it was. If Ran Carthon can have a singular vision and goal in mind, and it aligns with Mike Vrabel, it may not be 2023 and it may not be 2024, but 2025 could be a really good year for the Tennessee Titans going forward, in a good state with the franchise. It does not mean that they won't have success. I think they'll have immediate success. I think with Ran Carthon, with Mike Vrabel, with their alignment, what it seems like in personality and vision and all that kind of stuff, with the few pieces they can move around and make and the moves they can make on the offense and off season, specifically getting a better offensive line coach, getting a better offensive coordinator, and getting a better defensive backs coach on top of the players. I think that you're going to see a double-digit team again in Tennessee, and I think they're going to be number one in the AFC South. And then I think that it keeps on going up from there, because the goal in mind for Mike Vrabel is always going to be, I want to win the Super Bowl. And Mike Vrabel's goal next year is going to be, we're going to win that fucking Super Bowl in 2023. Will it realistically happen? Crazier things have happened, but that's the thing. It's all about taking the little wins and seeing the vision be put together, and the vision, you got to see it. I've said vision like 50 times.
I think that's right, though. You have to sort of understand, like, as each piece of this order of operations kind of happens, right? Coordinator, quarterback, Derrick Henry, offensive line, wide receiver core. Like, you want to see them all fit together well. Like, you want to see what the goal is and what the vision is. And Tim says this roster rebuild will take some time, will take a while, but that's just time. Vrabel's a top 5 coach. If Carthon can manage the trades and cap space, again, a lot of Trey says the same kind of thing. It's going to take a little while. Can they recreate it? Is it too soon to make the beer goggles joke about the vision of John Robinson at the end of the?
There you go. I think that's what this guy said. Woodrin the Pootie. J-Rob's vision got cloudy in a mist of Bud Light, Paisley Blazers, and Dippin' Tobacco.
I've come close to having some of that chaw land on me before. when you stand out there in the corner of the 7-on-7 drill and he's standing right next to you, and he's just spitting that chaw everywhere. I think trying to become, so I love the idea of modeling your vision, like you're talking about, off the Niners. I think they're the best built organization in football, from basically 1 to 53 or 2 to 53 on the roster. Although you can argue that they've gotten pretty good at the depth at quarterback. But the coaching staff, the front office, the whole deal. I think it also fits into what we know about Vrabel, which is he wants to be physical, play with great intensity on the defensive line. Their defense is already kind of built very similarly. First round elite number 1 pick kind of defensive lineman, Bosa and Simmons, right? Especially if you re-sign him. You get Warner in the 3rd round. You get Greenlaw in the 5th round. Another first rounder in Armstead. Harold Landry was almost a first round pick, basically, right? When he'll be back healthy. Byard was a 3rd round pick. They've got David Long if they can bring him back. They're kind of constructed in a similar way on defense to how the Niners are built. We know Vrabel has the same philosophy of what they want to do. He's just the defensive version. And so the question is going to end up being, what does the offensive version look like? Let me ask you this. How many pieces, if they're going to go down this path, how many current players on the Titans offense would you consider to be, we went through the list, right? Like McCaffrey, Debo, Kittle, Juszczyk, Ayuk, Jennings, Trent Williams, and the rest of the offensive line. I would say Treylon Burks and Chigakonkwo might be the only 2 pieces on the entire offense that would fit into that future vision, if that makes sense.
I would think that Kyle Phillips could, but they're not tied to Kyle Phillips. I would put him up there, and I would think that NPF could, as far as the offense goes.
Good.
Because
That's a good
I know
point.
a lot of people are down on Nicholas Petit-Ferrer, but you got to remember, guys, he's a 3rd round right tackle that is thrusted into the starting job, and that he won and earned, and he hit the rookie wall. Why is everybody so down on him?
Oh, I think he's really,
but
really
then
good.
I also think that, once you get an offensive line coach that maybe meshes well with the players of today, rather than what we've heard about Keith Carter, that maybe will be able to focus on the right things instead of just screaming turbo, turbo, turbo all through a practice, and actually get something done with technique, because that was the problem with Anthony Midget and Keith Carter to me, was that the technique and the penalties and all this stuff. Look, if you were asking me what I think is a realistic way to get this team up quickly, I think that you need to bring in Richie James, and I think you have him compete with Kyle Phillips, but he brings a little bit more dynamicism to the slot, and he will also be able to go deep and bring him home.
I know what you meant.
Yeah. I think that also, you got to upgrade Hillard. I think you need to upgrade him. he could probably thrive under at San Francisco, but in Tennessee, probably not. Like if you took him over to San Francisco or Miami, he'd be great. But I think right now you need to upgrade that spot up next to Derrick Henry.
I mean, essentially, I mean, and Tim asked this: does Tannehill not fit? And again, I think there are a lot of temporary fits.
Yeah,
Tannehill fits temporarily.
Yeah.
I think Dontrell Hilliard fits temporarily. I think Derrick Henry could fit temporarily.
Let's not just settle. And I think that's the key, is that this team can't settle. I would just much rather go ahead and let them upgrade that position, because it's possible. Jeff Wilson, Raheem Mostert, upgrade that position. Yeah. I see get Darius Slayton or DJ Chark. I don't mind Darius Slayton, but DJ Chark can't stay healthy. Why are you guys wanting injured players?
I do
not understand this.
I know it's so funny because you're like, I love it when you lose your mind over this, because you're like, we've just spent 2 years arguing about not touching injured players. I will say when DJ Chark is healthy, I really like his game, but that's a different subject altogether.
Hey, great for 3 games, guys.
I do think it's about finding elite pieces at premium positions.
Yes.
And to me, that does include quarterback eventually, but I don't think it's the top most pressing need, because you have a guy who is capable enough in the short term, whatever that might be.
Can get to a Super Bowl. Ryan Tannehill can get to a Super Bowl. Now, can he win it? Maybe not, but at least he can get there.
So I'll totally agree with you, by the way. MPF, Burks, Phillips, and Chig. Thanks,
Go
John.
draft Paris Johnson. Get your Trent Williams for the next 20 years. That's who you need to go for in the 11th round. I'm probably never going to come off of it. I know I'll be enamored with the wide receivers that come through. Get a wide receiver in the 2nd.
Well, I think you have a number 1. I think Treylon Burks, if he stays healthy, can turn into a true number 1 wide receiver.
You have to sign at least 2 wide receivers. You need 3 wide receivers. Nick Westbrook-Akine needs to be challenged for his roster spot. He cannot be the guy.
I agree.
So I think you got to at least get 3 wide receivers. Whether you sign 2, draft 2, and sign 1, draft 1, I don't care. Get 3 in here.
So MPF, Burks, Phillips, Chig. By the way, thanks, John Robinson. Those are the 4 pieces we think that could be a part of this moving forward. I agree with you. You need the premium positions are quarterback, left tackle, and wide receiver. Those are the premium positions. And so if you can get a left tackle and a wide receiver in this draft with your first 2 picks, you can solve a lot of the problems pretty quickly in 1 year. And then when it's time to make another quarterback decision the following year or the year after, you've got better stuff, better situation, a better environment already ready for a guy who is going to step in potentially and take over.
Harris Johnson, Rashee Rice, 1st, 2nd round. Let's go.
I'm with you on that. I do like Josh Downs, by the way, from North Carolina. Josh suggested
you need
him.
An outside threat, and I feel like Josh Downs is going to end up being just like a slot guy. So I want to look for an outside threat. That's what you said about Wan'Dale Robinson. Okay, don't sell me a bill of goods on these short ass wide receivers. We need
Josh Downs is way bigger than Wan'Dale Robinson. But Zay Flowers also is a fast guy. Here's the guy I love though, and I don't know if it's he feel the reason I don't think they're gonna he feels more like a JR guy, which is weird. But I talked to TD about this, Tron Davenport. Xavier Hutchinson out of Iowa State is a phenomenal football player, but he's kind of built like he's more of a bigger body outside. He's not the speed guy.
That's what this team needs. So. But don't sleep on Xavier's release, though. Xavier's really good off the line at the release. I believe Xavier Hutchinson, Rashee Rice are both going to be at the Senior Bowl that I will be at and Stoney will be at. And on January 30th all week, and they are on them 2. And we got one that we're kind of holding back for ourselves. Me and Stoney actually have our guy already.
Oh,
and we were on the same page. We didn't even know about it, but all
right. So coverage coming live from the Senior Bowl right here on a football show, Football and Other F Words, So Bros Network. Shout out to Stoney and the guys. So we're gonna have a lot of fun stuff for you guys planned. So make sure you stay tuned and make sure you check out the Kingston Group. BuildKG.com. Make sure you check out the pharmacy, of course, for great burgers, both locally owned companies, owned and operated here in Nashville for you, Nashvillians who live here. And if you need a great burger, again, there's lots of places to go watch games. But if you want a great burger to actually have a conversation with another freaking human being, you go to the pharmacy, you disconnect, and you enjoy life, and you take a deep breath, and you think about the future of Titans.
All right, here you go. Ravens coach John Harbaugh says it clearly. Sorry, breaking news.
Breaking news.
Lamar Jackson is our quarterback and says there is a 200% chance he stays.
Wow.
And he will be involved in the offensive coordinator hire. You know why? Because Greg Roman sucked and he hated Greg Roman.
All right. So here's we'll wrap up the 49ers conversation. Go to the pharmacy to eat burgers and use the Kingston Group when you make any big decisions about your house. They're great. I'm telling you, they're great people. Just go check them out. So to wrap up the San Francisco thing is, I think it is the right model to follow. I think there's going to have to be some differences because you cannot replicate some of the pieces. Kyle Shanahan, Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, namely those three, and frankly, maybe even Deebo. But you can try to go down that path, and we will hopefully see that vision from Ran as we do this.
Let's put it this way. In the AFC, if you had San Francisco Light or Diet 49ers, whatever you want to call it, this team with Mike Vrabel as the head coach with Diet 49ers would be Super Bowl favorites in the AFC.
I think Vrabel is absolutely to me, the whole vision of the Niners, God, we got to stop with that word. The whole identity of the Niners fits right in with what we know about Mike Vrabel, to me. And again, this is the word that comes to mind. I know you're all about speed, skill, and size and physicality. The word that comes to mind when I think of San Francisco's offense in particular is versatility. They can use all of those pieces in a lot of different ways. There's a lot of pre-snap stuff. There's a lot of motion. There's a lot of different lineups and formations. They are so creative with the pieces because they're so versatile. And those are the types of players. Chikakonkwo is an example. Very versatile player. You've got to get guys like that and the elite speed and athleticism.
The most important thing, and I know everybody's going to say, well, you got to get a quarterback, you got to get a left tackle, you got to get a wide receiver. Yes, you can get those, but if you do not have an offensive coordinator that knows how to fucking use them, then it does not matter. I think offensive coordinator right now is the most important hire because then that lets you know where you need to go. And now with Lamar Jackson off the table, whether or not it's Tannehill or Tom Brady, you got to get an offensive coordinator that knows how to do something with either of them. It has to be creative, has to be innovative, and less predictable.
So that sort of leads us right into the next part of our conversation, which is the OC battle that is currently going to be waged across the NFL. There are 10 job openings now with Baltimore firing Greg Roman. You've got Tampa Bay, Arizona, the Chargers, Indianapolis, Washington, the Jets, New England, Carolina, Baltimore, and Tennessee. Now, I would take the Chargers off the table and just say clearly the best quarterback, the best situation.
I would say the only drawback of the Chargers is that you are sitting behind a lame duck head coach if he continues to be shitty.
I hate a lame dick. It's the worst kind of dick.
Yeah. But I took all 10 teams, and I did head coach, quarterback, running back, pass catchers, offensive line, and I put them 1 through 10. And the Chargers ended up by far, by 0.8 points, being the most ideal landing spot for an offensive coordinator.
If I was an offensive coordinator,
best quarterback by far out of the whole group.
It starts and ends with Justin Herbert.
Third best pass catchers, third best running back, fifth best offensive line, and sixth best head coach.
Okay, so I guess so let's start with then where do the Titans fall? How attractive is this job amongst these other ones? Because if you love Lamar Jackson and that kind of quarterback, then you would look at Baltimore, John Harbaugh, stability, that kind of stuff. If you love Kyler Murray, also a similar quarterback to Lamar Jackson, although a much better throwing arm, but also some. I will say that they're both a little weird.
This Lamar Jackson news kind of would change my rankings if he was already signed. I have him as the fourth best quarterback situation out of the 10 teams, because obviously you could come in and say, I need Lamar Jackson. We're going to build around Lamar Jackson. But until that's concrete, I have it 3.2 as Chargers. Then you got the Rams right underneath them, because obviously Sean McVay is the best head coach on the list. They have the second best quarterback situation, and they have the second best pass catching situation.
So you have
Chargers, Rams, then Ravens.
Okay, that's fine. I agree with.
Now, probably
with
Ravens will flip up right around to the Rams. Past the Rams.
I agree with what you got so far.
Then I got Titans.
The only one I would argue with
is it the Jets.
Is the Jets?
Jets and Titans are tied.
If you kind of knew as an OC what the plan was at quarterback, like if you know that they have almost everything you need. Like they have a better offensive line, better receiving core, better backfield potentially. Yes. So that's the only one I would put up there. Otherwise, you know what I wrote down? I wrote down like Washington. Okay, I like some of the skill players. Okay, I like for Indianapolis. No, not really a lot there other than Jonathan Taylor and Michael Pittman. There's some nice offensive linemen if they rebound, but those are questions. Tampa is like a giant ass question mark. No idea. New England giant question mark. No idea.
I have the Titans and the Jets the same, right? But they're the same exact ranking. But I put the Titans above the Jets because Ryan Tannehill is a much more attractive situation to walk into than than those shitty ass quarterback room and everything.
What if Ryan Tannehill's on the Jets?
Well, that's a little bit different. Then you're in a even better situation because probably, as the offensive coordinator said, I want Ryan Tannehill out of here.
Yep.
So you get a lot of flexibility with Ryan Tannehill that you don't get everywhere else. When you go to the Jets, you're stuck with Mike White and Zach Wilson.
If the Jets, Joshua asked, this is a good question. If the Jets get Carr, would you rank the Jets ahead of the Titans? And I would say yes, because of their supporting cast being that much better. Not because Carr's that much better.
Yeah, I guess I probably would if Carr went there. Then I have Buccaneers, because the Buccaneers, for all their flaws, have a good offensive line when they're healthy. We know they have a good defense, and we know that their pass catchers are probably some of the best pass catchers in the NFL.
How long? Like, Godwin's been hurt. Evans is getting older. How you trust that group to be there long term?
I trust it more that do Michael Pittman and Alec Pierce.
Oh, I love you. Come on now. Michael Pittman's good.
He is not good.
Yeah, you got to stop with this. You think Trevor Lawrence is bad too? You got to stop. You got to stop.
What makes Michael Pittman good?
All of his things, like the fact that he's
okay.
The fact that he's played.
Analysis.
No. Hang on. The fact that he's played for a shitty bunch of people, quarterbacks, coaches, all this other stuff, and has been nothing but productive. And I don't know.
Except for all the drops that he cost the team with, and you know, I don't. He is not a. If you're ranking wide receiver ones, he's supposed to be their wide receiver one, he would not be in the top 20.
Oh, I don't necessarily. Yeah, I'm not even gonna. I mean, like, even on this list, like, I would take McLaurin over him.
You would take both Godwin and Mike Evans over him, right?
If they're fully healthy, probably yes.
Yeah,
but they're also a lot.
So who has the better catching situation?
Tampa Bay.
The Buccaneers.
Tampa Bay. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's why they're above.
But their offensive line is their offensive line is shitty. I don't like.
No, they had the second best offensive line, or out of this group. If you look at the numbers and look at the metrics, because I did to make sure I had it all right. They had the second best offensive line out of this group. The Colts
maybe that's why all these teams are looking for coordinators.
Yeah, the Colts had the seventh best, by the way, out of this group.
Who's at the bottom?
Patriots, Cardinals, Commanders.
Where do you have Arizona overall? So so you got Chargers, Rams,
Cardinals
Ravens.
are ranked 9th.
Wow. Okay. You must. If some coordinator loves Kyler Murray, though, you just have to love Kyler Murray. Like, if you don't like Kyler Murray, then you know.
Yeah, I mean, he's such an easy person to love, and he was with a offensive coordinator that literally drafted him. The head coach literally drafted him while they just had a first-round pick the previous year. So, I think he loved Kyler Murray. I think the problem is that he's an unlovable fuck.
Yeah, well, he also he puts up huge numbers and they made the playoffs, so you can.
That
win
was
with
a
him.
fluke. That was because of a hot start. I am so far out of Kyler Murray, and then they have aging pass catchers, and
that's true.
And then when you look at the running back situation, I like James Conner. He's proven to be good in that system, but what does the system changes? Same thing with Kyler Murray.
So we have no. Oh, by the way, Carolina is on this list as well, and that's a big giant ass.
Well,
question
technically,
mark too.
they still have an offensive coordinator. They have not fired their offensive coordinator. See, that's the issue that people are. I've seen a few people say that teams like Carolina, the Texans, they still have offensive coordinators employed. So that's why these guys do not have offensive coordinators employed. So that's why it is important for the Tennessee Titans to get off their ass and start interviewing people and get people in the door, because it's not going to remain that way. You're going to have, a bunch of new head coaches that then fire the staff, right? They got to go in and fire the staff, and then you're going to have some more openings. I mean, if it's not by 15 by the end of this season, I'd be very surprised.
And I agree with where the Titans are for this, probably the same reasons you do, which is they're not the best, but they're slightly better than average on this list. And let's say it grows to like 10, 12, 13, or 14 or whatever. They are in a good situation. I think here's why I think it's an attractive situation. Number one, you have a really, really good head coach and owner and a pretty good defense to start off with. That's a pretty good starting point right there. You've got a couple of pieces we've already talked about that are young. I think this is where I think Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill have the most value, is that you can do the turnover, the rebuild, the sort of pivot, if you want to call it, whatever corporate buzzword you want to use with the Titans offense, you can do that with a pretty high floor at quarterback and running back. If Tannehill and Henry are here next year, you can make the pivot knowing you're going to switch to this other type of strategy, and you're not doing it with Mike White and Dontrell Hilliard. Like you're making this pivot with some nice young pieces and two pieces in the backfield that are great temporary options, if that makes sense. That to me is why it's attractive. And I agree. I think it's right about, I would lean the Jets, but I think they're basically kind of about the same, other than the Jets having maybe a better supporting cast. But other than that, I think you got to go get somebody now, because now you got to beat some people to the names, right?
You got to start getting off your ass. And I think that's why I think after Friday, after the press conference, it's kind of like when Amy put out the presser that said that, or the press conference article that said, I'm looking for collaboration. And then Mike Vrabel says, I'm doing this. And immediately after those people talked, you saw all this flooding and information come out about, oh, here's who she's interviewing. Here's who's getting fired. So I think once Ran Carthon is announced, you're going to see more offensive coordinator interviews start popping up surrounding the Tennessee Titans. And an interesting name that I want to bring up just real quick, because there's some more breaking news. Josh Hoyer, who is the defensive coordinator for the Miami Dolphins for the past 3 seasons, was just let go. He is a New England defensive backs coach and cornerbacks coach, and he was a defensive assistant towards the end of Mike Vrabel's playing career at from 2006 to 2008. Could be a name that I'm going to obviously, at some point write about, but that could be a name to keep on your radar as a defensive backs coach, passing game coordinator.
AE says, do you think the offensive coordinator needs to be hired before Carthon and Vrabel go to the Senior Bowl, which, of course, Zach will be there covering it? I think that would be ideal.
Yes. They announced Todd Downing and Shane Bowen both at the Senior Bowl, right? Or right before?
I don't recall.
It was one or the other. Here's how I feel about this.
Just not Bill O'Brien.
Have your system set. That's what you need. If you're going to stick with the same kind of Shanahan-esque system, because you're going down there, that's what you need to be scouting for. Yeah. Have that at least set. If you got a ton of options under the Shanahan system. So to me, it's not necessarily important, but I also think there is a good point that could be made about this, because if I recall correctly, I believe Todd Downing was announced down there. Charles London, who we know was approved to get an interview done. We don't know if the interview's taken place, been confirmed, or anything like that. We just know that he was approved by Atlanta to get the interview. He is the offensive coordinator for the American team, which I feel like they need to rename the American national team. Just sounds weird at this point. Just Senior Bowl, American National, I don't know. It just sounds weird. Anyway, he's going to be the offensive coordinator and play caller for the American team down there in Mobile. Seems like that would be a good opportunity to say, hey, we're going to hire Charles London, and guess who's going to be exposed to all the offensive pieces at the Senior Bowl?
I love a coordinator being exposed to all the pieces, because then you can pick better, right? Yeah. Or at least have good input on it. I'm not really sold on Charles London yet, but that's just me.
Yeah, I'm not either, but I just love the idea that the Rams saw something in him, and so did the Miami Dolphins.
And Arthur Smith, so.
Yeah, but not as a coordinator, but as a different position.
No, but I mean, he's of value to Arthur Smith, a guy we respect, right? Like we respect Arthur Smith and his mind and his offense, and he's a guy that he thinks adds value to that unit. I think you're absolutely right to say you need to have narrow the pool of candidates to the system you want, right? And it doesn't matter, even if it's just 2 or 3 or 4 guys, as long as they're all sort of in the same column of schematic design, then I think you can scout players for that philosophy. I think that's exactly the right way to put it for you. All right, quickly here, go to Kingston Group Pharmacy. Love those guys. Great burgers, of course, and Kingston Group, Nashville's locally owned custom home and remodeling firm. Just talk to them before you make any big decisions about your house. I promise you, they will absolutely take care of you, treat you right. And even if you don't want to use them and you don't give them any money at all, they will help you. That's the kind of people they are. Pharmacy, of course, great place to go hang out with the family. You can get out of there for less than $50. Great place to to go get a burger, some brats, some tots, and some locally sourced beers that you can't really get anywhere else from all across the state of Tennessee. So always looking to add creative menu items and do good stuff for local people that you cannot get at any other like national burger chain in Nashville. So also they've got like just a killer patio back there. The beer garden is just awesome, unlike anything else in the city as well. So
last 2 or 3 days would have been perfect patio weather for the pharmacy.
Little windy today, but it's pretty good. It's pretty good,
Yeah.
and it's going to be warm. It's going to warm up quickly because we don't have springtime here in Nashville. we just go right into fucking summer, and hot as shit. All right, but real quickly, London. You going to go to London? Can we get you and Herndon to do some F Words live? Maybe some football show live in London?
Hey, someone's footing the bill. I'll go. But, London's a shitty-ass city. I hate London.
Come on with that. That's ridiculous. London
is
awesome.
Food sucks. They have no good restaurants there. Literally all of the restaurants for pubs and drinking are the exact same fucking restaurant with just different London decor. Like, it's all the same food. They're all owned by the same company. I think actually factually correct, by the way. I would love to go for the sheer fact of going to the stadium and watching the game in London with the crowd, but everything else I'm out.
Oh man, London is such an awesome
I will literally just find one pub next to the hotel and I'll just drink and eat there because there's no sense of going anywhere else. So make it a one Gordon Ramsay restaurant.
If a gazillion times better transportation, ancient history of culture.
I've already been to London for all that.
All things that I care about that I would want to go see.
But
well
I've already done all that. I'm good.
I know. Okay, fine. Not everybody's as cool as you. Not everybody's been to London. So shut the fuck up for a second. All right. So here's the deal, though, because Herndon was tweeting about this. And he's like, well, the Titans will technically lose a home game because now there's an odd number. We got 17 games, and so you lose a home game. I would argue that it's a better sell. I mean, Nissan Stadium is not exactly like to the gills every time. So depending on who they play, I don't think it's as bad of a loss. Would you love to lose a road game? Yes, of course. But like, I think you
better on the road. Right?
Like, I think you can get just as many Titans fans to London to go to the game. Like, I think the atmosphere will be far better than even at Nissan Stadium. So my point is this is a little tongue in cheek here, but I don't think it's nearly as like, it's not a big hit. Like the outcome of the 2023 season does not hinge on the fact that they're playing 8 home games instead of 9. Like that's not a factor in how I'm going to evaluate the team, I guess is what I'm getting at. And I think it would be a great, cool ass trip for most Titans fans and Nashvilleians to go. We were going to go for the Packers this year, but the game fell on my stinking daughter's birthday. Way to go, honey. And so we didn't go. We celebrated her birthday instead. So bummer.
I look at it this way. Those that are complaining about a home game, losing a home game, you're still getting the same amount of home games that you got 2 years ago. Right. You're getting your money back in some form or fashion. I saw the announcement, and really, the Titans have been horrific at home.
Right.
Yeah. Who cares if they're not there to lose another game? And hopefully that changes, but we got to deal in finality and facts at the moment.
All right, let me ask you this. You're in charge of like a big group trip and you can pick the place. Do you want to go to Mexico City, Berlin, or London to watch your team play?
Oh, I'd go to Berlin in a heartbeat. Okay. I have never been to Germany. I want to go to Germany, especially if it's in October and there's like Oktoberfest stuff abound. I would be like in heaven. I wouldn't even go to the game probably. I wouldn't even make it.
I want to go. I don't think they play the game. Do they play NFL games in Monterrey, Mexico, which is where the World Cup games are going to be? Do they play Monterrey? Is it always Mexico City? Do you know?
Always Mexico City. And the beer is not better in London because the beer is fucking warm.
Well, now warm beer is unacceptable, but the beer in London, they've been brewing beer
Guinness
a long time.
Guinness is great, and they have great beer. But I get this. What I'm saying
Isn't that Ireland? Isn't Guinness Ireland?
Well, I mean, they still have it over in England too. It's better in Europe. Look. Here's the thing about this whole England thing is that, yeah, they have some really great beer, but every restaurant I'm going to go to has the same 4 fucking beers on tap.
Damn, dude, you are, golly. I mean, I don't like monarchies either, but you're very harsh on the London thing. I think it's great. I think it's awesome.
It's like the Buffalo of Europe. It's just this shitty.
Oh my God, that is so rude to London. That's so rude. Their transportation system vastly superior to everything in every city in our country. All right, quickly, NFL playoffs real fast here. Which one are you looking? Jags, Chiefs,
Giants, Eagles is my number 1 choice.
Really?
San Francisco Cowboys is number 2. And what other one am I missing?
We got Bengals, Bills, which is awesome.
Yeah, that will be the next one.
This is as good a divisional round as I can. I mean, the divisional round is almost always one of the best weekends of football in the entire calendar year. But this is exceptionally good. You got a division rival with the Giants Eagles. You got Lawrence versus Mahomes. You got Allen versus Burrow. And, of course, you got Cowboys-Niners, which is one of the best rivalries in the NFC all time in the playoffs. So this is as good a set of 4 games as we're going to ever see. Who are the 4 teams? What are the 2 matchups?
I'm going Chiefs, Bengals, Giants, 49ers.
Ooh, I was going to take the Giants too. That defensive line, is salty.
They're playing on another level. Adoree Jackson you saw what he was able to do against Justin Jefferson. I worry about the offense, but let me say this for the Giants. I'll say this: Brian Daboll, obviously coach of the year. I just believe in the coach there more than I do in the Eagles coach. I just believe in Brian Daboll, and I think that's okay to say, right?
What's his last name for the Eagles? I can't ever remember it. Santelli or what's his name?
Sirianni.
Why does it look like the guy's never he looks like a vampire? Like he's never slept. He looks hungover like every time I see him. Brian Daboll, not exactly a picture of health either, but neither am I. So whatever, go to pharmacy. I agree with you. Daniel Jones is doing things with no supporting cast largely, other than Saquon Barkley. It is all Brian Daboll's offense. I agree with you on the Giants. The other thing about the Giants is the defensive line. That defensive line is extremely talented, and they are now all healthy for basically the first time all year, and it showed last week. That was part of why Adoree Jackson had success. I like the Chiefs. I like the Giants. You took the Bills or you took the Bengals?
Yeah, I took the Bengals.
Ooh.
I don't know if you watched that Bills game.
I watched unfortunately, I watched every play.
God, they looked so disheveled and out of sorts, and maybe they come back from it and they do something, maybe they rebound.
Yeah.
But like the Bengals just looked really good. No, they kind of
No, Niners is the easy one, but But here's to your point about the Bills. I was actually doing.
I think the Chiefs is the easiest one.
Okay. Chiefs and Niners win.
Chargers lost that game. Jaguars didn't win.
That's true. Here's the thing about the Bills. I think you nailed it already, which is when you come out and play. And this was the Georgia Bulldogs against Ohio State, and then becoming Georgia against TCU. Either a performance like that against Miami wakes you up and shakes you out of a haze, and all of a sudden you play your best football because you're pissed off that you didn't play very well. You played a sloppy game. You turned the ball over. Gave the Dolphins short fields, like all that stuff. And then all of a sudden you come back and you're like, oh, that's not who we are. Let's be the best version of ourselves. And then they just turn it on and become the Bills, right? Like become Josh Allen and he goes crazy. Or Joe Burrow is just that good. And what we saw last weekend really is a sloppier Buffalo team than we expected. And so I just don't know. We just don't know which one it is. I'll take the Bills, but I don't feel good about that one. So
yeah, that's I think the closest matchup in terms of I think those two teams play really close to each other in terms of the quarterback play, the wide receiver play, the defenses that go there. They didn't really play well against the Ravens, and so they didn't play well either. Then it's like you got two teams that are really coming off some really bad subpar performances by their standards coming into the same game. And it was 2 weeks ago where they played and they're going to have this Damar Hamlin thing hanging over both teams after both let down initial playoff games.
And the Bengals have lost. I think they're 2 starting linemen on the right side of the offensive line.
I always forgot about that. So I think I'm going to switch to Bills. I forgot about that.
I think the Bills are a little healthier and at home. I'll take the Bills, but I think again, the quarterbacks in the AFC, awesome. Quarterbacks in the NFC, completely drunk. It's so much fun to watch in the NFC. For different reasons.
I hope the Giants are able to keep it close because Stoney does put in here that Adoree Jackson wasn't available for both of the last Eagles games. So it'd be nice to have him back. I really hope that Giants and Eagles is actually close. I don't want it to be a blowout because I'm afraid I think the Chiefs Jaguars will probably be the highest scoring game. But I think that it's deceptively going to be a blowout.
Yeah. Like 45-28 or something like that. Yeah.
And whereas, the Giants and Eagles, I just don't want it to be like 45-16 or something like that.
I'll say this. What do you have to beat the Eagles? You have to have an elite defensive line to stop that offensive line, the power rushing attack, and to pressure the weapons that they have.
You got to get Jalen Hurts on the ground with that shoulder, too.
And the Giants got it, man. Those dudes up front are legit on that defense. And I trust the coordinator and the quarterback combination. I don't know how many weapons they've got, but, man, I think the Giants are going to play really well. I'll take the Giants outright. whatever. Who cares? It's going to be fun.
I'll probably sprinkle some money on the Giants outright.
I might do that as well. All right. Well, thank you guys for hanging out with us. Of course, thanks to Kingston Group and the pharmacy. Make sure you sign up for Zach's Substack, of course.
Stackingtheinbox.substack.com.
There you go. Go to the
$4 a month.
Go to the pharmacy for great burgers, of course. Go to Kingston Group for any big decisions about your house. Make sure you check out all the great shows from across the 440 Sports Network, which now includes the Paul Kaharski podcast, Fringe Element for college football. We've got the Gold Standard for Preds. We've got Club and Country for soccer. We've got you covered, Nashville. Again, this is local stuff here for you Nashville sports fans. So if you care about Nashville sports, we've got you covered. Thanks to everybody for hanging out in the comment section. You guys were great today. As usual, follow Zach on Twitter. He's Zach Lyons. I am Braden Gall. Thanks for hanging out. Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll talk to you Monday. This has been a football show.